Boom.
What's what's up, folks, and welcome to another edition of A Chat with the Pack, your first ever live edition of A Chat with the Pack. I hope you're all having a great Friday evening. I am your co-host, Kyle McGee, alongside the legendary Drew Blazer.
Hello. How's it going?
Not too bad, man. Hanging in there, all things considered, with the, stay-at-home order that's going on in Indiana right
Yeah.
now.
Yep.
Yep. Other than work and the occasional trip to the grocery store, just been kind of hanging out, watching some Netflix. Just got done watching the super infamous now Tiger King last night, which I know you're still watching. That absolutely insane that stuff is even remotely real. But man, I can understand why there's a bunch of memes and why it's so popular. I can say that much right now.
You already finished it, you said? Oh,
Yes,
jeez.
Rebecca and I finished it in one day.
There's 10 episodes or how many?
7.
Oh. Oh, I might finish it soon too then.
Yeah, it's you and I might have to do just a special podcast on that once you've watched it all, because oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh, we will, yeah. It's a good idea.
It's so many twists and turns. There are no words to describe what goes on in that documentary, and I know you're only 2 episodes in, but I'm sure you can agree.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, especially after probably the first few minutes of that first episode. It was like, oh, this is something
Yeah,
else.
I remember you basically messaged me and were like, "What in the hell is going on?"
Yeah. What is this? Who is this
Yeah,
guy?
and it gets crazier and crazier. Good old Joe Exotic.
Oh, man.
Speaking of crazy, NFL free agency. Um, man, Tom Brady is a Tampa Bay Buccaneer in a move that no one initially saw coming, but now that it happened, I think made the most sense.
Yeah, like I don't think I heard on ESPN or anywhere about Tampa Bay, so that kind of took me by surprise, but not really at the same
Yeah,
time.
it took me a little bit by surprise, but then when I thought about the receiving targets he's going to have there, Ronald Jones as a running back, OJ Howard as tight end, and Bruce Arians as a coach. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better fit for a guy like Tom Brady at this stage of his career.
Yeah, oh, he definitely needs some young guns there who, pretty good at what they do, and
Absolutely, and one thing I think he'll benefit from is having multiple options at wide receiver, because when you look at his history, he doesn't have multiple options all the time. I mean, that's one thing he's suffered from, is he hasn't always had the best receiving options.
yeah, no, you're completely right. Yeah,
Which is why, being from Indiana, I'm sure I'm committing blasphemy even saying this, but that's why it drives me nuts when people say he's a system quarterback. I do not believe so. I believe he is a phenomenal quarterback. Do I believe that he plays for a great system? Absolutely. But I don't believe that that's why he's considered as great as he is. I believe he's considered as great as he is because he's as great as he
yeah.
is.
I don't know, and I
I mean,
don't
I
know if Bill could take any quarterback and make it work as well as they have with Tom.
no, and there absolutely not. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason it's worked so well with Tom. Um, I mean, like somebody said, with Drew Bledsoe, yeah, Drew Bledsoe led them to the Super Bowl that they lost. Drew Bledsoe led them to the playoffs again, but then when Tom Brady took over, they were able to win.
Yeah,
Tom Brady was the X factor in them being able to actually win it all.
yeah, exactly. There you go.
And to me, I told you earlier, a nice little hello to Dylan, by the way. D Strong 125 in the chat. Nice to see you.
That's my boy.
It comes down to the greatest of all time argument. I believe Tom Brady surpassed Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl with the Falcons just by being able to mount that comeback. I don't think that's something Peyton Manning has ever been able to do in a situation like that in a big game at that level.
Oh yeah, I mean Peyton, I guess, has had his comebacks, but on that level, yeah, exactly. Wow.
Well, for example, the Seahawks Super Bowl, he was in a situation like that and they stayed down and actually went down even worse and lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as I've mentioned to you before, the when they choked against the Saints, for example, I
Oh.
mean, Joseph Adai was the only good thing on the offense for the Colts during that Super Bowl.
No, you're right. Yeah.
I believe Peyton Manning's the best regular season quarterback ever, but
Oh,
I think Tom Brady's the best quarterback of all
yeah,
time.
definitely. Yeah.
Regular season, Peyton Manning was a field general like no other, but during the playoffs, he choked.
Yeah. No, can't argue against that. No.
Well, and then there was another quarterback that made a move. My boy Philip Rivers came to the Indianapolis Colts, which you and I even talked about, and you gave me credit. I predicted that before the Chargers announced they weren't going to be re-signing Philip Rivers.
Yeah.
It was just something I saw coming transition wise. He knows the coaches the Colts have. You could tell at the end of the season with the Chargers, he was frustrated with the way things went and the way things had been going. He has been for quite some time. As a Chargers fan, management does not do the best job. Coaching is not all that great, so I don't blame them. And I saw this coming a mile away, and I personally think it's a great fit on both sides, especially with it being a 1-year deal.
Yeah, and you just see what he can do within the 1 year, and I think it'll go pretty well. So.
Absolutely, and you look, the Colts actually just picked up All-Pro cornerback Xavier Rhodes, the Vikings cornerback that they released, and they've also picked up 2 defensive players. They traded for Buckner, and I know they picked up another 49ers defensive player. I can't remember his name right now, but one thing I'm noticing is everyone the Colts are signing right now, they're signing to a 1-year deal.
Oh, wow.
They're not signing any 2 or 3-year deals. They're signing 1 year. To me, what that indicates is they're going all in on this year.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
This year they're going all in. They're trying to be Super Bowl or bust for this season, is what it sounds like.
And if it don't work out, yeah, exactly. Then you just go from there.
Doesn't work out, you rebuild. Yeah. I think that's where they're at. And Philip Rivers, he doesn't plan on playing too much longer. I think he said 1 or 2 more seasons. So I think a 1-year deal works perfectly. Jacoby Brissett probably not going to work out long term as a starting quarterback, especially not if you're trying to be a winning team. So I think, you get that 1 year where you can maybe transition to get a young quarterback that can be your franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I think so. It's a shame.
It is an absolute shame, but I mean, it's part of it.
It's just how it goes.
It's the NFL. At the end of the day, it is a business, and for teams that they're in the business of winning games. And if you aren't helping a team win games, they're not going to keep you around.
Yeah. Oh man.
Now another move in the NFL, kind of breezing through the NFL just because I feel like we're a little behind on things, but in my opinion, probably the worst trade, or at least one of the worst trades of all time, the Texans trading away the arguably best wide receiver in the NFL right now, DeAndre Hopkins, for David Johnson. I don't see why you would do this when you have a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, and why would you do that with DeAndre Hopkins? It's a move that doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't make much sense. And like I was saying earlier, maybe it's because of the relationship with Bill O'Brien, I guess. But still.
I could see that. But even still, like you said, said, it's the best wide receiver in the NFL. You don't get that very often. And when you get them, you don't trade them away for, no discredit to David Johnson, but he's been injured a few times since his breakout season, and he hasn't really been able to produce the same numbers that he did. I just don't see this being a smart move. The Cardinals have already proved, they've got different running back options that can put up the same, if not better, numbers than David Johnson now. They don't really need him. All you did, in my opinion, was make the Cardinals better. Looking at it from the Texans, all you did was make the Cardinals better.
Yeah. Wow. Pretty one-sided.
It is. Yeah, and Deshaun Watson's the betting odd favorite to be the starting quarterback for the New England Patriots starting in 2021. I think that'd be a good fit for him and for New England. Wow. Gives them a new franchise quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. Still a young dude and all, yeah.
Absolutely. He's got his whole career ahead of him, and he's already proven that he's an elite quarterback.
Yeah. Oh, definitely, yeah.
Speaking of young quarterbacks, Teddy Bridgewater to the Panthers, a good move by them, moving on from Cam Newton. Cam Newton was actually seen working out with Tyrod Taylor, which makes me wonder if the Chargers are going to be smart and try and pick him up.
Oh, yeah, that'd be good.
I mean, obviously Cam Newton, he might not be he might not be the same as he used to be, but Cam Newton is still a good
Yeah.
quarterback. I'd be shocked to not see a team pick him up.
No, like at the end of the day, I think he can still get the job done. So, yeah,
And for a team like the Chargers, I mean, no disrespect to Tyrod Taylor, but Tyrod Taylor, I don't believe is a starting quarterback right
yeah,
now. I don't think he's your number one option. I think you can start him every now and then, but I do not believe he should be the number one option unless you're completely trying to rebuild the team.
yeah, yeah,
But I think Cam Newton is who they should try and go for. And then another quarterback, I don't know where I see Jameis Winston ending up.
yeah. And do you think his career might be over, or
No, I don't believe his career's over.
yeah,
He's still relatively young.
yeah,
I mean, he produced good yards and good touchdowns. He just threw a lot of interceptions. I think he's still got a career ahead of him. I just don't know if he starts this
yeah?
season.
Well, definitely. Yeah, I don't think he will.
No, I would be shocked to see him start at least at the beginning of the regular season, because as we know, there's always quarterbacks that underperform and people are calling for their heads
Yeah.
within 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I could easily see him replacing one of those quarterbacks.
Oh man. Yeah.
Well, and then the Vikings traded away Stephon Diggs, which I believe was a good move on their part. You got he and Adam Thielen were kind of splitting numbers. If one of them had a good game, the other one didn't. Adam Thielen was their number one option. Kirk Cousins isn't, an elite quarterback to where they're getting numbers out of both guys, and Diggs wanted out. So I think this was a good trade, but he went to the Bills. I mean, I think realistically the Bills have been a decent team for a couple of years. I think, with Tom Brady leaving the Patriots, the Dolphins being the Dolphins, and the Jets being the Jets, I think the Buffalo Bills, the AFC East is theirs for the taking.
Oh, I agree.
I think the NFL gets a lot more interesting following this offseason. It's almost kind of like last season's offseason in the NBA to me. It's going to make things a lot more interesting. Things are more open now.
Yeah. Just because of one big move, and then everything else starts to fall into place.
Absolutely. And I think, you look at the 49ers and all the defensive players they're losing. I think the Super Bowl curse is going to affect them. The losing team in the Super Bowl statistically almost always misses the playoffs the following year.
Oh.
I could see that happening with the 49ers.
Oh man. Yeah, it might.
Their defense was like their strong suit, and they're losing a lot of those guys.
Yeah.
One of them was the All-Pro Buckner, who the Colts got. One of the guys I mentioned earlier that they're obviously going all in with. Yeah, it is. It's going to be interesting. I'm hoping the season can start on time, or maybe even if it's just a little bit delayed. I hope we get a regular season, and I can't wait to see how it all shapes up. The NFC South, I think, is the division to watch. You've got Todd Gurley on the Falcons now. The Rams didn't even trade him. They just flat out got rid of him.
Which is kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that he's had some injury problems, but, he still showed, flashes of his old self last season once he started recovering a little bit more. I think getting nothing for Todd Gurley was a bad move. I think the Rams are kind of blowing up their entire franchise right now, and it doesn't make sense. It almost looks like they're blowing it up to the point of like, hey, we didn't win the Super Bowl, 2 years ago, so let's just flat out rebuild now. They missed the playoffs this past season. They were mediocre at best throughout the year. You get rid of Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley goes to the Falcons. If he shows up like his old self, I think the Falcons' offense is automatically a threat again. You got Matt Ryan, Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Brees, and Tom Brady. They're all going to be playing each other twice this year. That's the fact that I think we are spoiled with Tom Brady going to the Buccaneers, because we are getting Tom Brady versus Drew Brees twice a year.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point.
That's spectacular to me.
Enjoy it while you can.
I'll take that any day. And I'm probably one of the few people in Indiana who says this, and I probably am going to be glad there's a stay-at-home order until people forget this. But I am personally rooting for Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the simple fact alone that if Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win a Super Bowl, I can stop hearing the ignorance of Tom Brady is just a system
Yeah,
quarterback.
exactly.
I believe if they win the NFC South, even if it's just that, if they have a winning record and they're a good team and they are a playoff contender, you, I feel like that conversation has to stop.
Yeah, you got to give the guy his credit. He's really good.
Absolutely, he's phenomenal. He probably looking at the fact that he was a seventh round pick and
Yeah.
how he looked in the draft and everything. Yeah, maybe he shouldn't be, but he is.
Oh man. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Absolutely unbelievable player, and we are kind of like LeBron James. Whether you love him or hate him, we're lucky that we are in an era where we got to watch him.
Yeah. I agree.
Moving on from the NFL to a bit of a controversial topic now. Our boy, UFC light heavyweight champion John Jones,
Yeah.
arrested in Albuquerque yesterday for DWI, where he blew at or above twice the legal
Oh
limit.
God.
He negligent use of a firearm. He fired off a round in public
Oh my God.
from his car. Driving with no proof of insurance.
What? Oh.
Yeah. So, looking at the track record of John Jones here, in 2012 he was arrested for DUI after crashing his Bentley into a telephone pole. Not long after defending the title against Rashad Evans.
Yeah, I remember.
And keep in mind, in 2011, he actually, the morning of his title fight with Mauricio Shogun Rua, the day that John Jones became the youngest champion in UFC history, which is a record he still holds today, he actually tracked down a criminal because he overheard a woman being robbed of her purse from her car, tracked the criminal down, took him down on the street and held him in place until the cops arrived.
Oh, I remember you telling me about that a couple years back. Yeah.
Yeah. A few days ago was the 9-year anniversary of that.
Oh, time just flies by.
So, absolutely. Nearly a year later, he's arrested for the DUI with the Bentley. Then, ahead of his title fight with Daniel Cormier, it wasn't announced till after, but ahead of his first title fight with Daniel Cormier, he tested positive for cocaine. Cocaine is not a banned out-of-substance drug, apparently. Out of competition drug. So, which doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
So they couldn't punish him, but they did announce it after the fact. So he then spent a night in rehab.
Yeah.
And then following that, he was involved in the infamous hit and run where he crashed into a pregnant lady's car, broke her arm. Thankfully, nothing happened to her pregnancy. Baby was fine.
Wow.
But he then fled from the scene. There was marijuana in the car. He literally ran from the scene on foot, came back later to retrieve cash that he had left in the car, and then ran off again. Was arrested, had the title vacated over that. Returned, beat Oven St. Preux for the interim title, was due to fight Daniel Cormier for the light heavyweight championship to unify the title at UFC 200, the biggest event in UFC history at that point. Fails his drug test right before the fight, results in the main event being canceled, UFC 200 completely being flipped on its head.
Yep.
Comes back a year later, fights Daniel Cormier. It's the redemption story of John Jones. Wins by knockout. Beautiful post-fight speech where he, was humbled towards Daniel Cormier for the first time. Thanked everyone who believed in him and not giving up in him, and for all his detractors, basically saying like he had turned a new page, and he thanked all of them for getting him right. And then after the fight, it's announced he tests positive for steroids.
Yeah.
He was suspended. He was stripped of the title. His win was overturned. He was arrested for drag racing and a DUI. Cut to, he's coming back. He's going to fight Alexander Gustafsson. He tests positive again. And they move the fight so that he can still fight to Las Vegas. He wins the fight, and they say, oh, well, it was just traces of what he tested positive for before, which is ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
Basically says that if this guy tests positive throughout the rest of his career, there's going to be like, oh no, it's still Trace's. He gets a free pass the rest of his career.
Oh God.
His last 2 fights, he's barely eked by decisions. I mean, in my personal opinion, he lost to Thiago Santos and he lost to Dominic Reyes. Both those fights, in my opinion, he lost those decisions. But then he moves on, and now this arrest happens. John Jones is going to be the biggest what if in the history of mixed martial arts, and is going to be one of the biggest what ifs in all of sports. This guy has lost years off of his career already for the stupid stuff he keeps pulling. John Jones has 1 loss on his record. It's a DQ, and it's ridiculous. It shouldn't even be on his record. It should have been a no contest, if anything. But say you take that off his record, John Jones realistically is undefeated in his entire career. The only person that has ever beaten John Jones is John Jones, and he continues to do it over and over and over and over again. And every single time we hear the same thing. Oh, I'm going to be stronger. I'm going to come back better from this. I'm going to learn from my mistakes. And then he continues to do the same things. He has been given more chances than most people I've seen get to keep making the same mistakes over and over again. And it's just ridiculous to me. And what's upsetting to me is this man has a God-given talent. He is a man who should go down as the greatest fighter, greatest mixed martial artist of all time. But he's tested positive for steroids numerous times. He's had all these screw-ups, and he's lost years off of his career. He's wasting his own potential, and it's upsetting to see because you have a guy who goes out there as a master of his craft. This is a guy who, for years, they said barely took his training seriously because he was too busy partying, then was going out and dominating people. That's how phenomenal this guy was.
Wow.
And he's wasting time off of his career because he has to keep doing stupid stuff. He can't get out of his own way. I think he's got a lot of personal demons that I think he probably needs to step away from the sport and work on overcoming. Because he's not, at this point, he keeps trying to paint himself like he can be a role model. He's not. He's not a role model. He's a phenomenal mixed martial artist who makes a lot of terrible decisions as far as his life goes. And at a certain point, you need to stop getting a free pass just because you're good at sports or good at something to be getting away with this stupid stuff. At some point, you need to work on yourself as a human being. And that's where John Jones is at right now, in my opinion. He needs to work on himself as a human being because he's absolutely wasted potential at this point. You have a guy who, like I said, lost years off of his career. This is a guy who by now could have realistically cleared out that division. There's still some contenders left. There's still what-ifs with his last 2 fights. Could have cleared out that division. Could have moved on to heavyweight and could have potentially been dominating 2 weight classes. And like I said, been the undisputed greatest of all time. But he continues to get in his own way. And when I got the news yesterday that he had been arrested again, I couldn't even be shocked.
Yeah.
But as a mixed martial arts fan and as someone who's been following it for years, it's just disappointing to me to see this.
Time and time again.
Time and time again. To the point where whenever you see the news headline, you're just like, yep, John Jones strikes again.
And the sky is blue. Shocking.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's pretty much how it feels when you get an update. It's at this point it should just be breaking news. John Jones screws up again.
And do you think that UFC is to blame at all for keeping him around? Or no?
See, it's kind of a mixed bag because you give the guy suspensions. He's been forced to take a year off, nearly 2 years off, actually, at a time. And at this point, I think that you kind of do have to be like, okay, enough's enough. You need to take some time off from the sport and focus on yourself. He needs to get help.
Yeah.
Is what I would say. He clearly needs to get help. I've not watched the video, but apparently in the body cam video, he's clearly emotional. Was telling the officer, I haven't gone on a drive in 2 weeks. I just needed to go for a drive. I just got stir crazy, all this and that. But he had a bottle of fellow UFC fighter. By the way, it was Jorge Masvidal's vodka that he had in his car.
Oh God.
Which is 40% alcohol, I believe the police officer said. and there was only a quarter of the bottle left. It was clearly an open
Yeah.
container. It's just disappointing. It's infuriating, but also disappointing at the same time. I've never been a big John Jones fan, but I've always been the first person to say he's a guy who should go down as the greatest fighter of all time, whose entire legacy is going to be tainted by the decisions he's made out of the octagon. I mean, when you test positive for steroids, I think it automatically taints your legacy, which is sad because I don't believe steroids have contributed in any way to John Jones as a fighter.
Yeah. So, yeah, just real sad story about him.
It, it honestly is. I think, on top of being one of the biggest what ifs, I think he's going to be one of the saddest stories to look back on just because of his self destructive tendencies.
Yeah. Jesus.
Well, moving on to our last subject, and that is Coronavirus Mania, aka WrestleMania 36.
Yeah.
You've been keeping up with WWE more than I have, but we just got the announcement that Roman Reigns will not be partaking in WrestleMania 36 for his title match with Bill Goldberg. They're having to split it up into 2 nights. They're advertising it as too big for one night, which to me is just irresponsible. And you've got all this stuff that's going on in the world, and they won't even acknowledge it. They're not acknowledging, hey, we're splitting this up because there's a disease going on. We want to still provide the fans with the best experience possible. We cannot have all these people in one building in one night. No, they're doing it they're making it an ego trip for themselves and talking about how great they are.
Yeah, which they've done that forever. They always do that.
Forever.
Sad.
And I know you and I have had opinion. Do you think they should have postponed or even canceled WrestleMania?
Well, originally I was hoping it would still just go on and they could just get it done and move on. But I don't know. Like at this point, probably so. At least just like postpone it, maybe a month or I don't know how long, with all this stuff going on. But yeah, postpone it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you look at every other sports organization has postponed all their events. The UFC is swearing up and down the UFC 249 card. Khabib and Tony is still going to happen. Joe Rogan announced today that he's not commentating, and he doesn't believe that the event will actually happen.
Oh.
He thinks that Dana White just feels that this fight between Tony and Khabib is cursed. It's a fight everyone's wanted to see for years. It's been booked 4 times. This is now the 5th time. I think Dana White just doesn't want to cancel it and have to admit that this fight is cursed. But I think at this point, that fight's not going to happen realistically. It's going to be postponed. I do believe WWE should be smart and postpone this event. Just because at this point, you're not providing the best experience for your fans. You're not providing a true WrestleMania.
No. I mean, I was just going to go ahead and watch it anyways and just get through it. But yeah, you're right. It'd just be really weird.
I mean, there's reports that now Braun Strowman's going to be facing Goldberg out of nowhere last minute.
Out of nowhere, no reason.
He just from a booking standpoint, he just lost the Intercontinental title, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. Andrade apparently got hurt at the Raw taping, so he's not going to be part of WrestleMania. And he was just in a random thrown together match with him and Angel Garza versus the Street Profits with absolutely no build. Miz won't be part of it. Rey Mysterio's quarantined. Dana Brooks quarantined, so they won't be part of the event, even though they've had matches building. Miz apparently won't be part of it. Carmella and Corey Graves won't be part of it. There's just so many people not taking part at this point. It makes you wonder, why bother? Why not just wait and give the fans a show that they deserve, even if you can't have a crowd?
Oh, I know. And if you just wait a month, maybe stuff will clear up. I don't know for sure, but maybe.
It's obviously hard to say. I know they're saying realistically they're expecting mid to late June is when it'll start slowing down, because they said, this is obviously going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I still say postpone your shows until you can actually provide a solid show for your fans. Nobody's going to be upset with the WWE at this point if they postponed.
Yeah, I would say postpone Mania and then just stop doing Raw, stop doing SmackDown, stop doing all that. And
yeah, like somebody even offered air throwback like Attitude Era Raws and stuff like that in the meantime.
You could, yeah. Why not?
There's absolutely no reason why they couldn't,
Uh,
as far as I'm
And I
concerned.
like doing the AEW watch-alongs, but you can go ahead and postpone that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no reason why they don't postpone at this point. But they're not. But WWE for sure is not going to postpone WrestleMania because I think at this point they're just more set on doing it just to do it than they are doing it to provide a full WrestleMania experience.
Yeah, it's ego. Just
There's there's reports that Cena versus Wyatt is being filmed in a
oh
warehouse.
god,
There's the Boneyard match, which I've never heard
no.
of. I don't even understand what that's supposed to mean. I don't know if that's supposed to be like the PG era Buried Alive. There was no context given, so I don't
Well,
know.
that's what I thought, but I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know. I feel like it's going to come off like a very low budget wrestling show.
yeah, it's yeah,
At this point, if they postponed it, even if they still had to do it from the Performance Center, they could make it look a lot better if they just postponed it.
yeah. I agree. I don't know if it's worth it.
I don't think it is at this point. I think either you're not gaining anything from continuing at this point.
And they probably just look bad by doing it.
And they do. That's the thing. I mean, I know people say there's no way they could win in this
Yeah.
situation, that people would be upset with them either way. But at this point, I think people are more upset about them continuing.
Yeah, it gets to a point where it's like, no, just go ahead and postpone it.
Yeah. Because, like I said, at this point, it feels like more so they're just trying to continue it for the sake of doing it and stroking their own ego than they are doing it to put something together for the fans.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah.
Man. Yep. Things are definitely going to get more and more interesting in this country as time goes
Yeah,
on.
really crazy times.
Absolutely. Everybody, stay home if you can. Avoid going out for anything unnecessary. Going to work or going to get groceries and stuff like that. Absolutely do it. Other than that, just take this time to spend time with your family and relax. I almost feel like the earth is kind of telling us that we need to slow down in a way. You look at Italy, the waters are clearing up. You can actually see the fish in the water now. Dolphins are swimming up close to the coast. I'm not trying to say that like it's good that people are dying. Don't get me wrong. It's not. It's horrible. But China has no smog over for the first time in forever. Pollution is down across the world
Oh,
right
wow.
now. It's almost a sign to me that everybody says they can't wait for us to return back to normal, but I don't think we should.
Yeah,
I'm not saying we need to keep living like this forever, but we can't go back to normal. We need to do better.
of course.
We've been destroying the earth for years, and I think it needs to stop.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think this should be a wake-up call for people. People need to continue practicing good hygiene when this is over. You don't just practice good hygiene when there's a disease that's running rampant.
Yeah.
Dylan in the comments said that we should see what he deals with at his store every day. I can only imagine, Dylan. I've been to the stores as a customer who's just trying to buy groceries, so I can only imagine, man. And I will say, like, on a very serious note, we appreciate, people who are working in the grocery stores right now, like our good friend Dylan. Being that my girlfriend Rebecca, who I live with, is a nurse, obviously have a newfound appreciation for nurses, and it's unfortunate people just now appreciating
Yeah.
them when they've been doing this stuff for years. But absolutely appreciate every single nurse and healthcare worker who's out there right now. Everyone who's keeping this country running and who's keeping us safe and keeping us going in these crazy times we're living in. Serious thank you to everyone out there who's a part of that.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah.
Well, Drew, do you have any parting thoughts?
I don't think so. Just stay safe, people.
Yep. Stay safe. Goodness. Okay. Stay safe, everyone. That's what happens when you go live, folks. You can't edit out your mistakes.
That's all right.
Stay safe, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed hanging out with us. We'll be back next week at some point. Not sure what we'll be discussing. Probably some good old Tiger King,
Yeah, we
our
should.
boy Joe Exotic. We'll definitely have to do one on him. I know people are loving him right now. But yeah, I think that'll do it for now. Thank you guys for tuning in. Drew, it was great talking
Yeah.
with you. This has been a chat with the pack.
All right.